going through physical therapy and hoping to come home a little longer.
Morning, everybody. Say the pledge here.
Morning, Ted.
Morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Not much of an immune system, so whatever you guys get comes to me.
Alrighty. So it looks like the first thing on the agenda is the Crow Wing One Watershed, One Plan discussion. Crystal, if you want to come on up.
Sorry.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you guys for having time for me today. I was wondering if instead of going right to the ask, if it's okay with if I just talk a little bit about the One Watershed, One Plan, and also how we work together and what the relationships are. I have an update for you guys on the Mississippi One Watershed, One Plan as well. And I'd like to kind of put it all into context first. Is that okay? Yeah, okay, thank you. So with the One Watershed, One Plans, well, let's start with our relationships. There's the push for us to work regionally within the One Watershed, One Plans, and you guys, I think very wisely in the beginning, took a step back and said, well, we want to keep our local control. And as I've been going through the process of learning my job and learning the One Watershed, One Plans, I'm seeing that it makes a lot of sense to plan on the watershed level, because within a watershed, you often see the symptoms in one local place, and you can address and readdress that symptom over and over again, unless you address where the water flows through the whole watershed and manage the land in the total watershed. So we can do that in many ways, but if we're looking at conveyance and storage and ground cover in the greater watershed, we can reduce the impacts in those pressure points, which is where we see them. And so for that reason, planning on the major watershed scale makes a ton of sense. But when it comes to implementation, nobody is really able to implement very well unless you're close to the people and to the landscape where you're working. And that's where we have something in common. I know that you are all in this room because you want to serve the people, and your realm is in economy and policy setting to make sure that we're taking good care of the resources and people in the county. And I am doing the same thing, but my realm is in the natural resources and making sure that we have services and funding to help landowners and land managers, whether they're private or public, to be able to manage that land to suit their vision, while also thinking about the impacts to water quality and maintaining soil health. So when I'm thinking about what I do, what I most want to know is, what do the people here need? What do they want to do? What are our issues? And how can I bring a better understanding of what the choices are and how we can work together to get those funds and do that work? So One Watershed, One Plan is one of many ways that we can access some funds to do that work. And in the planning process, they're looking at that total watershed so we can better understand where we can work with people who want to manage forest land, where people want to manage ag land, especially grazing and hay land. And we can help provide services, technical assistance, and funding to implement processes that allow that person to still use the land and make a living sometimes off the land, but also to protect the water, so that when the water is hitting that land, it doesn't just erode the soil and run off. So when I'm thinking about our partnerships, I really want you guys to know that I see the county board and county staff and the people, the landowners here, as my first partners and all of our other partners that we're working with to try and get the funds and do the planning, you know, we're working together so I can do a better job here. And I want to be able to keep that in context within the One Watershed, One Plan, regardless of the pressures from outside that might be wanting us to do it differently. So if you're thinking about it and any of the steps of any of these watersheds or anything is going on that doesn't seem right to you, and you think I didn't catch it or I could have done something better, please let me know what it is, because I think we really have the same goals, and I'm an imperfect human. I will make mistakes, but I want to do the best I can and do the greatest good that we can for everyone, and make sure that when we're doing projects on private land that we're helping that landowner meet their vision, and we also have a public benefit, which is usually the water quality and quantity benefit, especially in our area. So that's the background that I've been thinking about in context of these One Watershed, One plans. So whenever we're doing the One Watershed, One plans, there's a group of counties and SWCDs, and we all have a seat at the table. And then there's a fiscal agent and a need for someone to organize the meetings. And it seems like most of them are having one fiscal agent for the planning process and then reevaluating when it comes to implementing if that should be the same fiscal agent or a different fiscal agent. So with our Leech Lake River One Watershed, One Plan, Cass County SWCD is the fiscal agent. And was for planning and implementation. For the Mississippi River Headwaters, One Watershed, One Plan, it's Beltrami County. And we're done with the planning process and moving into implementation there. And then with the Crow Wing River, One Watershed, One Plan, we at Hubbard SWCD would like to be the fiscal agent, and the group has agreed that we can be the ones who are submitting the planning proposal and planning to be the fiscal agent for the planning process. So the resolution and documents that I sent over to you guys describe the Crow Wing One Watershed, One Plan, list the partners, and there was a resolution in the packet stating that you plan to support the planning process, that you would like us to go ahead with it, and the idea that Hubbard SWCD would be the fiscal agent. And that document is really important for me to have to be able to submit a complete planning proposal by June 10th. So every county involved, the county and the SWCD, if everyone turns in a resolution stating either that you support the One Watershed, One Plan process for the Crow Wing with Hubbard County SWCD as the fiscal agent, and you would like to participate, or that you support and you don't wish to participate, or that you don't have very much of the watershed in your territory and therefore you're not going to participate or be involved at all. So if I can get that document, that resolution document from each of the 9 counties and SWCDs and submit it with our proposal in June, then our proposal will be considered to be stronger and will be more likely to be funded in this year. If we're funded for planning will start next winter, and that's when we need to put together the policy committees and the steering committees and start organizing. Whenever the person or the organization is designated as a fiscal agent, you end up, as you guys know, managing the money and the administration of that grant and the reporting to the funding source. So keeping that in perspective for all of the One Watershed, One plans, it's important that we remember that administration, my SWCD, if we are the fiscal agent, we get some funds to do that work. And I think it is the right amount of funds from what I can see. It's not too much and it's not too little, but what it does do is help us have cash flow. So if we have a lot of One Watershed, One Plan activity and not so much other grants because we're busy with One Watershed, One Plan, which I don't necessarily think is a great idea, but if that ends up being the case in any given year, if we're the fiscal agent of one of those One Watershed, One Plans, then we have cash flow. If we're not, we're waiting on the fiscal agent to send money to us as projects are completed. So in general, I do think we should have diversity of funds, and I should make sure that we have funds coming from federal and state and other entities, so we're not 100% ever relying on One Watershed, One Plan. But just, thinking about that cash flow, that's one reason it's important for us to be the fiscal agent for one of the 3 One Watershed, One Plans. The fiscal agent usually helps with organizing meetings, but doesn't have to be that person. There can be someone else designated to do that. But the fiscal agent is not the manager of all of the people doing the work in the watershed. So this is where that local control component that you guys were concerned about when you were reviewing the documents for the Leech Lake River One Watershed, One Plan some time ago, that you guys were concerned about is local control is partly the ability to make decisions and to have control over what projects we're going to pursue and what we are following for a standard for completion. Another way of having local control is access to the funds. If you don't have control over access to funds, you lose a piece of local control. So that part of the conversation I want to keep in mind for talking about the contracting for the Mississippi One Watershed, One Plan. But to finish out with the Crow Wing One Watershed, One Plan, my ask when you guys meet again is that you review the resolution. Let me know if you have any questions about it, if you would like to address any of the language in it, and then if you would be in support of going forward with the Crow Wing One Watershed, One Plan and Hubbard SWCD as the fiscal agent with that timeline of planning starting next winter. And then we would be expecting the planning process to take 1 to 2 years and then implementation after that. So how about I pause there before I try and talk about the Mississippi One Watershed, One Plan?
I have a question.
Yes.
I was just now comparing the proposed memorandum that we got from March 3rd with the one that we got in the packet today. And the one today is abbreviated quite a bit, which is good, except for one item I'd like to see stay in from the original one, and that's where we have that 60-day withdrawal ability, and that's not in the one for today.
Okay.
Maybe somebody else can see something else in there. Or maybe, is it necessary to add about, in the one from March 3rd, it says about adding new members? Is that can be something in the bylaws, or does it need to be in a resolution?
Well, I think that when we move into planning, so when we get awarded the planning grant, then we will want to set our group policies and bylaws and norms for how we meet. It's really important that we set ourselves up with policies that suit us well there. In the resolution to support, you're stating now that you support us moving forward with the process. I still think it's a good idea to have that 60-day option to be able to withdraw. I think it's always a good idea to have those terms set out in any resolution or contract. So
See that added, yeah.
yeah, I think that that's right. And so so the one that I sent previously, I think did have it, and had it been edited by someone since then, or did I send, maybe I made a mistake and sent a second one that was different?
It was in there.
Okay.
I remember reading it was in there.
So today being the work session, really, we're just wanting to walk through this
Yes.
all and determine which elements want to be in there. And Denise was working with Chip Lohmeyer
Okay,
And he was gonna coordinate with you to identify the resolution to put forward, whether it's in April or May.
Okay.
And the timeline to get that done.
okay,
So I think we're gonna ask you to coordinate with Chip and what you're hearing from the commissioners to make sure that we get the resolution to match the conversation that we have today.
okay, perfect, yeah. So I agree. Would you prefer it to be 60 days or 30 days?
60 sounds good.
Okay.
I know the Leach one, we had like 120, but 60 is fine to me.
What's the Leach one at?
120.
Or, yeah, or
And then-
180 maybe even?
And then Mississippi's 30.
Right. 60 works, it's just,
I think that 60, because it's 9 counties, 60, you can get out of the contract if things are not going well and you're very uneasy about things, but it's not a long amount of time to wait. I felt that 60 days was a good number as well, so. Did you guys have any other questions about it, or did you want to go through line by line? I guess this is probably the first time I've been here in a work session to do this. So if you want to let me know how you would like to proceed with it, we'll do that.
A lot of it is repeat from,
Yeah.
so I don't think we need to go through,
Maybe just a paraphrase.
like what's up here now. What is one watershed, one plan?
Okay.
Would you agree? You two are the ones that
Yeah.
are really involved in that. Would you agree with that?
That's,
Other
that's
than that
fair.
one change, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So, the resolution, when you look at, I did send over a resolution and a memorandum of understanding document. And the one, again, that's really important that I have for the proposal by June is the resolution. And this resolution was a standard template that we first received from Bowser and was also used for the Red Eye Watershed One Plan, which Wadena Ottertail had been the fiscal agent on the planning process. And I think that if you have any other notes that you would like me to write down to address with Chip, I can do that. Otherwise, Chip and I can connect and go over it and then get on the schedule for a regular board meeting, correct? Okay.
And if our deadline is June 1st, we have 2 board meetings in May that we can push it out to May 3rd or May 17th.
Okay. It would be, I would feel very good about getting it in early if we're able to, but yep, the deadline is in June. So June 10th, I must have it submitted. I am planning to go on vacation on June 5th though, so I'd really like to be able to go on that day if possible. I'd be here if you need me to be here, but. Okay.
I guess my thought there is if we're ready, the first meeting in May would be great, because then if anything did come up that we had to tweak or something, we could finalize it
Okay.
at a later meeting.
Okay. Any other comments about the Crow Wing One Watershed One plan or the resolution? No. Okay.
I don't.
So I guess 9 counties, is that large in some of these watershed plans?
I think it's one of the largest in the state. Yeah. The good thing is that every county has already went through one of the One Watershed, One Plan processes, so everybody already has at least one experience of how this went and what happened and what worked and didn't work. And I'm pretty comfortable with the initial conversations with everyone, that we all are approaching this from that we are equal partners and we're working together, and we want to get a plan that's comprehensive, and then we all want to go back and do the work in our area. And And I think that that's ideal. I think that some areas and also some of the Bowser representatives would like to see us do more shared services throughout a watershed, which I think it's okay for us to be available for the other SWCDs when we have someone with a specialty who can do something, and that we handle that locally as well. But as I have thought about it, the larger area anyone tries to serve, the less you know your people, the less you understand the concerns, and the less trust that there is between people as well. So to do a good job, I think even when there are shared services, there's a benefit to having someone from the local office have the person with a specialty go with them and never just say, okay, this person is going to do this for us. That's been brought up.
I have one more question before you leave the Crow Wing one. When do you foresee the advisory committee being formed? Because I know I would like to see at least one farmer or landowner on that. And I think David has someone from
I've got it.
Beltane area he'd like to see on it.
And I'm making the list right now of everyone who would like to be involved. So if you want to give me their information, I can put them on the list. I think that the committees will be formed probably next winter, maybe November through February-ish. So, yeah. And I'm thinking that I would like to continue to meet here when we can. I've been using this room, which is nice because it's in town and makes it easy for you to attend if you want. And some people have a little bit of a ways to drive, but this room also really well allows me to have it virtual and in person. So people who would have to travel a long way have the option of calling in or Zooming in or whatever it is we're doing. So thinking about winter travel to get to a meeting. So, yeah. So if you want to send that information to me, go ahead and send it to me, and I'll make sure everybody is in the loop.
Yep.
Okay. Would it be okay if I move on to the Mississippi Headwaters One Watershed One Plan contract issue that I am coming up with here?
Yes.
Okay. So you all did see the resolution for implementation and the memorandum of agreement, and all of the counties and SWCDs involved signed a like document to each of those. What I have at the SWCD, because we're going to be doing the implementation work, and the fiscal agent, Beltrami SWCD, will have to reimburse us for work done. We have an implementation contract, which I didn't send out before the meeting. I've been following up with the other SWCDs to see what they did. So I brought a copy, and I can email a copy to everyone to look at as well after the meeting if you wish. So we have this contract that defines the terms of how we are going to work together to do implementation, and how we will get paid, and how reporting will be done. And what I've been doing since shortly after I started, and I learned about all the contracts we'll be doing and how important it is to have an attorney review contracts, is I've been asking Jonathan to look over contracts when I get a contract from another organization. So I had, this is what the front page looks like. Again, I can email it to you. This contract from Beltrami SWCD that outlines how we will work together, what our responsibilities are for implementation, and how we will get paid. I sent this over to Jonathan like I do other contracts. Usually he sends back minor changes for me. When he sent this one back, he let me know that that there's several editing errors that are easy fixes, but there's also no language stating how or when we'll get paid, so how Beltrami will pay us. And also that the contract is very one-sided, and it basically provides blanket liability protection for the fiscal agent provided by us, the implementing SWCDs. Jonathan advised that we not sign the contract as it's written, and that we use his comments and any other concerns that we have to request revisions or a new contract. And I've been discussing this back and forth with my board members, and we think what we should do is use one of the other contracts that we had good feedback on and is working for us in another area, either with the Leach One Watershed One plan or with our agreement with Crow Wing SWCD to work on easement processes, and use that as a template and make sure that what we put forward is a fair contract with protections for both the fiscal agent and us. So I have strong support from my SWCD board and also this help from Jonathan to not sign this contract as is. I believe that one of the issues with this contract too is on a business perspective, it really states the relationship as we, Hubbard SWCD, will be working for and serving Beltrami or the Mississippi Headwaters Watershed, which isn't really accurate to what we should be doing. The fiscal agent should be providing that administrative services to the whole group, and we should all be working to implement the goals and the priorities that were identified in the watershed planning process in our own counties according to how our counties want to move ahead with those priorities. So I just think that you should know what's going on with this, and that this is, I think, an example of the local control question that you guys were concerned about early on in the leach. And just so you know that I am paying attention to it, and I want to share what's going on with you, and make sure we take action to make sure we're doing what's good for us, and we don't sign something unless it's something that protects us as well and allows us to do our work.
Crystal, I appreciate you doing your due diligence on that and reaching out to Jonathan for his, what he's there for, his
Yeah.
advice.
I very, very much appreciate being able to send my contracts over to Jonathan, and he's really good at answering me, and I know he's super busy, and I can't be a top priority for him, but he always sends me good feedback, and he's pretty quick at it too. So, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
And, you know, this is one of the reasons in the beginning that I really wanted to focus on what the One Watershed, One plan should be and our relationships too. In my process of learning my job and who all the different people are and how they work together and what really matters, what comes up to me over and over when we have pressure points is, who are my people and what am I supposed to be doing? Like, what was this position established for? And it was established to serve the people and make sure that we take good care of our resources so we can continue to have those resources and have a good quality of life and good economy and a strong community here. And I don't know if I've mentioned it here before or if you all know already that the SWCDs were formed as a result of the Dust Bowl to get people out locally to plant trees and field rows to prevent the soil from continuing to blow away. So literally, we're created to stop that rapid erosion and figure out how to get out here and do the technical analysis of what can be done to protect the resources and how do we help the people do it. That's what we're here for. So that's what I want to do. And that has to fit in with what the local people need and want. And, you know, you don't have any options to do anything if you don't have economy and funds and ability to make money also. So when we're talking about these questions about easements and forest stewardship and taxes and whether you can harvest the forest or not, I think remembering that there's a lot of different ideas that come to the table with conservation, but it's really, really clear to me that managed land is also protected resources. So if what we're looking at is what do people want to use the land for? And what are the choices for using and managing that land that allows them to do what they need to do to be whole and also keep our soil healthy, protect our water. That's what we need to be doing. So thanks for listening to me.
You're welcome, thank you.
Yeah, I am. So those are the major things I had to talk about. The other mention is the Leech Lake River One Watershed One Plan. We're doing the phase 2 implementation planning for a budget for phase 2. Phase 2 just means, so we get funds in 2-year increments in One Watershed One Plan. We've finished the first 2 years already, and we're about to start the second 2 years. So we have to tell the state how we plan to use that next set of monies. So we will be meeting on Thursday afternoon to talk about that. We did discuss having some funds in there to outfit another truck for the brining. That was mentioned. We did that with 1 truck, and I understand 3 of the salt trucks serve the Leech Lake River watershed area. So we're going to allocate funds for at least 1 more truck in this next 2 years and hopefully get those 3 trucks in the total time outfitted. They can be used for other parts of the county as well, but we have to, with the leach funds, do the outfitting on the trucks that work in the leach. So, but I can also send over the draft budget for the second phase of the leach if anyone would like to take a peek at that, or Tom, if you wanted to comment on anything. Have you looked over it?
No, I'm going to do that this afternoon. I haven't had a chance yet. That's what I was going to ask you. How much do you think they'll get for the phase 2?
It's supposed to be the same amount.
Same amount? Oh, okay.
And we've been told that it could change over time, but we're expecting it to be the same amount, which I have one of those maps here. So the Leech Lake River is expected to be 598,000 every 2 years for the whole watershed. So, and it's pretty much Hubbard County and Cass County.
If anything's not spent from phase 1, does it get rolled over to phase 2?
I believe that phase 1 funds have now all been spent. There might be some final billings going out. We did cover the LaPorte stormwater project, which there's still more that can be done in LaPorte. And then the Walker Storm Scepter project was a really big one. We did a lot of forest stewardship, and we outfitted the 1 brining truck. We also have been working on the Cabacona River E. coli project, and implementing some egg BMPs and stream restoration there. We believe we'll be able to get that removed from the high E. coli MPCA list. Currently, most years it's not safe to swim or eat the fish from the Cabacona River. The portion that is from Cabacona Corner to Cabacona Lake has been the area that there's been trouble. But we think we're going to be able to solve that. And that's been paid for mostly by phase one. There'll be a small amount left to do for phase two. Yeah, we've done a lot of work. I think I'll be sending over a summary of work done for you soon. It's not completed yet, but it's been a lot done. It's been a good process, and working with CAS SWCD has been pretty easy because they're willing to forward us project development funds so that we can pay for our time as we're putting work in. And then when a project is finished, we send all of the invoicing and documents over to them so they have what they need to report on it, and then they pay for those costs. So the way that we're working with them, I think is going really well and works well for us. It's a small group, so I know that, you know, it makes it easier for communicating than a bigger group. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Crystal. It was very informative. I would like a copy too of the Leech Lake plan there.
Okay,
You want to send that?
I will send that out. So, thank you, everyone, and I really appreciate, you know, everything you do. I know I get a greater sense all the time of understanding that the reason that you're in this room is that, you know, you want to stand up for your people too. And yeah, I just appreciate that that's what you do, and we have that in common. And I hope you do feel like you can call or email me about anything that you're concerned about. So, yeah.
I appreciate your understanding that we need to serve our people and have a balance between protecting our environment, of course, but we also got to support, you know, the economy of the area.
Right. Just a personal comment as someone who, first generation going to college, coming from a family that were loggers, miners, and farmers, and from northern Minnesota, Lake of the Woods, Hibbing, Chisholm. And then when my dad got laid off from the mines, we moved down to the cities so he could work a job down there, and he retired from North Star Steel. My family are the people, you know, and I know what their struggles are. And I want to make sure that we're taking care of all of the aspects of what it takes to be a person making it work on the landscape. And I think a lot of people in northern Minnesota, they do make their living off the landscape, and managing those resources is not just important to, you know, protect it. It's, you know, people tend to think about protection as pristine for conservation's sake. But protecting is also making sure that those are usable resources that we can continue to have as an asset for a local economy. It all fits together. It's complicated, but it does all fit together. So, yeah.
I appreciate somebody with a balanced approach to it versus nowadays it seems to be off kilter quite a few times.
Well, I think we have, people aren't talking like we used to talk, so figuring out how we're all the same and have similar concerns, even where we come at it from different perspectives, we're not so good at that anymore. It used to be really common, you know, I would go to my aunt's house. Well, the guys were at work, my dad, my cousins, my uncle, all in the mines, and my mom would drop me off at my aunt's house so I could sit under the table and listen to them talk. But Sandy, my aunt, every day she would have maybe 6 or 10 different neighbors stop in and have cookies and coffee while the men were at work. Nobody does that anymore. If you pull up to someone's house just to have coffee, everyone's in a panic because I don't look perfect. What if you come in here and I have a mess? Well, she didn't care if she had a mess. It just was life. So anyway, thanks for letting me digress there, but I think figuring out how to talk more is really important.
I think you're very compassionate in field and what you do, and that is so greatly appreciated with myself, and I would imagine the rest of the board members. If we'd have more people like you, we would get a lot done. Or if we could go back, maybe, to the way it was, we can get so much done. So I really appreciate you. It shows.
Thank you. I am also trying to hire people who have a similar outlook. I think if you have had a chance to meet any of our newer staff, Jake, Brandon, and Claire, they're very compassionate people, and they each know their areas very well. So I'd like to keep them for a long time and do a lot of good work and make sure we know our community very well and do the most we can. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm done, I think, unless you would like to ask anything
I think
else.
we're good.
I sent you that info. So.
Okay, thank you. Well, have a good day and happy Easter, and drive safe. Hopefully we don't get a snowstorm, as Easter often brings us, so. Thank you.
Thanks, Crystal. Alrighty, next on the agenda is Hubbard County Redistricting 2022.
So we have here the 4 plans that we reviewed last week at the meeting. And we also have Jack available if we want to do any real-time modeling. He can plug in his computer and we can do that, but I don't know what the current comments were about the existing plans that have been outlined. The first map here is the current district boundaries. And you'll see that we have 2 districts that fall outside of the 10% deviation number. And then the plan number 1 essentially swaps Park Rapids precinct number 1 and number 2 between districts 2 and 3. And then we allocated Clay Township to District 4, and that brings us to a deviation of under 5% for all commissioner districts. And in my mind, it provides a lot more contiguity through the city of with the districts and the areas in the city of Park Rapids that they represent.
I think it takes into consideration a little bit of future possible growth. You know, since we're so close.
It probably does, because D2 is still under and D3 is still a little bit over. And precinct 2 is the one that's experiencing the growth in the city of Park Rapids. But that will probably balance for a period of time. I think that generally, yeah, this probably sets us up as well as we possibly can to not have to make major changes in the next 10 years from now.
You switched, and then the green is Tom.
I'm in favor of Plan 1. You know, where we just, I still have the 5 townships, and then just swap the 2.
That would be a different plan.
I do have yeah, you did a good job with that. I do have a couple questions though relating to, you know, the ballot. And we gotta have staggered terms. So 1, 3, and 5 would normally be running for a 4-year term. I'd kinda like to see it that way. And if, with this District 4, there's only what, so is that 76 population? Is that what that 76 means?
Yes.
So Dan would not have to run?
By this, if you look at the very bottom of this page, you will see that D1, 3, and 5 are up for election this year anyway.
Right. And that I'd like to see stay on 4-year.
Yeah, I don't think that,
Yeah,
that won't
it's a
change.
2-part question. A, when you redistrict, the presumption is that everybody's gonna be up for election this year, unless they can duck under this 5% threshold rule of 213 people for us.
Okay.
So it's presumed that everybody's up for election this year. District 4, with a population change of 76 people, does not have to run this year.
That's what I think.
Because
How
they
about
have,
SHARs?
so when you look right above, you'll see that the change in and out, we're way above the 5% threshold rule on District 2.
So still be a 2-year term this time.
So
and then-
District 2 is up for election. The second half of the question is when the board sets a resolution that you have to, and I don't disagree, the simplest thing to do is to simply say that District 2 will be running for a 2-year term, 1, 3, and 5 will be running through 4-year terms. But it is a second question after the first question. The
Okay.
first question is who has to run this year? The second question is how are you gonna allocate the staggered of the terms in the districts? And I think the simplest thing would be for District 2 to run for 2 years in November.
And then that would keep the rotation.
Keep the staggering rotation, yep.
For the next
Yep.
4 years, the next two turns through the 4-year cycle. And I believe the observation is correct that this swap probably allows for the least possible need for moves in the future. The areas that are gonna continue to grow are the populations, Henrietta went down, but Nevis Township went up. So there's kind of some swapping along the lakes. I think the biggest thing that we're gonna see is we'll continue to see modest growth in the city of Park Rapids. I don't see it zooming because we just don't have housing to make it zoom. But I think the biggest factor influencing residency in the county will be people retiring to the lake homes and declaring homestead and living here instead of visiting here. So I think we'll be above average for growth over the next 10 years for counties in the state, but I don't think we'll be significantly above average. I could be wrong, but like the weather forecaster, there's nothing to hold anybody to on that prediction.
Well, I would agree with Tom that Plan 1 is the least disruptive, and I shared at the last town board meeting that even the redistricting at the state level, to me, has been confusing, and I've had to get a map out to determine who my representative and senator are even gonna be. And so, from a resident standpoint, I think the least disruptive is probably and plus it gets us under the 5%, and no other plan does that.
No, none of the other
that's really-
proposed gets us under 5% for all the districts.
And for me, with Plan 1, my biggest concern was that it affected you and Tom the most. So I was gonna kind of go by what you guys were talking. And since you're comfortable at it, and for me, District 5 already being over, by a little over 5%, at the very beginning, months ago when we started this process, I kind of felt I was gonna lose a township or two. I just kind of was reserved to that idea. I didn't realize it was gonna go to Dan, though.
Well, hey, I've got a few comments here, if you don't mind, Theodore. I get it, I understand that you had some conversations maybe last week, but man, I got thousands of miles in there to meet and greet every single individual. And now you want to throw Clay in there? Really?
Only 76 more.
I don't think I need the people, trust me. I do think that the population is gonna grow in my area, maybe in a couple of years, because I have the lakes.
We only redistrict once every 10 years.
I know, well, then in 10 years.
I understand. Currently I've got 10 townships. So I know about the putting on the miles and stuff like that to touch all the corners of your district.
The only reason we swapped Clay was because that is exactly the number that dropped us below the 5% in all 5 districts. If we don't swap out Clay, then we're below the 10%, we're comfortably below the 10%, but we don't meet the 5%.
And I see the population growing more on the north and south end of the county because literally in the middle, there's a lot of public lands and stuff like that in the middle of the county.
I see the east growing, eastern portion, and maybe the northern portion. I don't know about the south end as much, but whatever. And I have I'm not really an outgoing individual, so that means I have to learn 76 more people in my district. It's gonna be a
So,
struggle.
Dan, I'm trying to look at this not from how it affects me as a commissioner,
Yeah,
as instead what is best for the county.
you mean the group, yes. Yep.
Well, I don't even mean the group that's sitting here, I just mean the position. Because I think that's part of the goal of redistricting is we're not supposed to, this isn't supposed to be personal, it's supposed to be long-term position.
I'm hoping that the price of fuel goes down with our new strategies that we have, and so I would gladly open and accept Plan 1.
I support Plan 1. It's simple and the least disruptive, and solves the problem better than any of the other options.
Yeah.
And the other ones, really, there's so much moving parts.
As a person who has fielded a lot of questions on redistricting from constituents, the easier the better.
I really appreciate staff
'Cause you
coming up with a simple solution that I didn't see.
every plan that's way
It's funny how it precluded a lot of us, and it was so simple.
I didn't see it or think about it because I was
Let's go through them.
head set on the fact that the city of Park Rapids was gonna balance their precincts. And so I didn't even consider those numbers. But again, if you look at the bottom, these pink numbers are the displacement
I don't want to get
that we're creating, and that's in and out of districts.
Yep.
So here's the least disruptive, but it doesn't get the balance right. And then everything else
I know a lot.
that we put forward is a major shift for all of the, most of the districts.
I'll have fewer homes to go to.
There isn't really any correlation here,
Clay used to be
among,
Ted's, right?
related to the congressional district runs along the boundary between Todd and Arago, Emma and Henrietta, and then bumps up and includes Mantrap, and then includes half of Akeley Township. That's the split. But there's nothing to be gained by splitting, for us to split Akeley Township between the commissioner districts.
So Ted, excuse me, is Velchotel in Clay?
Yep,
Great.
Is it Clay?
Yes.
Thank you, Ted.
you're welcome.
Yes, it is, and that might mean that we have a conversation about who would be on the committee, on the technical development committee for the parks planning. But one of the Clay supervisors is already on that technical committee, and we met last week. Yeah.
So you want controversy in my life? Thank you, Ted.
You're welcome. It's a great opportunity.
I look at it as a challenge, and I love challenges, so I'm very much embracing it with open arms.
So actually, the other plan that I liked, Dan, was that I would take Clover and Clay because that fit well in with Arago Township. But it doesn't get under the 5% but if you look at the lay of the land, that had validity.
Any tarred roads in Clay? No, that sounds great. Plan 1, I accept that, and I think it's best for the whole organization and the public.
So then I will work with Kay to bring this as our plan forward, and we will also then talk about our, the establishment of the commissioner. That District 2 will run for a 2-year term so that we continue to have our cycling and offset commissioner cycles.
And just to reiterate what Jeff said, when you look at redistricting every 10 years, if we accepted the next plan where I would, District 2, not me, District 2 would be Clover and Clay. If you look ahead in 10 years, we would still have the same problem of underpopulation, because that's not a huge lake area. And so District Two is not gonna gain a lot of people by moving that direction.
District two would be underpopulated again, and you would either have to take on Lake Alice, or you would have to do some other major changes. You could incrementally change, but City of Park Rapids isn't gonna change the balance. Balancing 2 and 3 seems to be the longest term solution.
I noticed on tomorrow's SWCD agenda that they were gonna talk about matching their districts with the counties, but it doesn't sound like there's just been some resistance to it.
The only conversation I had with them is that they have a responsibility to submit their districts the same as the county does. And they do still have the responsibility to have, to try to have them equally populated. Now, they are not held to a specific number, but, and I completely get that they're more concerned about the geographical areas than they are in the population areas. I guess I get that makes sense. I just offered to them, if they adopted the county's plan, they wouldn't have to balance, because we would already have done that. So I don't know what they're gonna do. They will have to communicate that with Kay, because Kay has to submit, as the auditor, submit all these plans to the state.
They may be deciding tomorrow.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So, nice, thank you. So then, District 4 takes Clay. The effective date of that would be when? June?
January 1st. I believe it, I don't believe it changes until the election would change. I think you would represent who you represent through the end of this year, and it would be the January 1st where,
However, the people that vote this year for District Two and District Three that would be flipped, and so that's why I thought it was June, because,
but they won't be voting until November.
correct. Oh, and you're asking about representation, yeah, that's the difference, but the people that vote this year will have to know their new
Mhm.
redistricting.
Yes.
Oh, I
And-
see.
And because the legislative and the congressional districts in the county are changing, basically Kay has to inform every voter in the county, so everybody will get notice of all the levels of representation that they have. And we're gonna wanna make sure to point that out, that there's a pretty substantial change within the city of Park Rapids for representation.
So I would like to be involved in Clay Township, or the new possible development.
It's a nice group of people.
Of Deep Lake.
Yeah, Deep Lake, yeah. If you can arrange that, then, since you're giving that to me, thank you.
Is there anything else?
There's nothing else on the agenda, so I'll take those items and that election rotation and work with Kay to get that on the agenda for the 19th and certified before the 26th.
No, I know that.
So if there's nothing else, I guess we're adjourned.